I want to thank you all for coming out on such short notice. We typically would like to schedule these meetings in advance and, as a courtesy to everybody and let you have a little notice, a little time to put your schedule in order, but we felt we're really committed to getting information to the community, and there's been a lot of developments, and we felt like it was worthwhile to get up here and talk with you. We've got some really excellent folks here to share some good information. They're really going to drill down and talk about your area specifically. We'll talk about the entire fire, but we're really going to give you a good briefing on what's going on right in your backyard, which I hope you guys will, I hope that will be useful for you. Same routine as we did last time. If you would, please hold your questions till the end. We'll open it up for question and answer. And silence your cell phones if you would. We're going to start off with Mr. Jeff Tonkin. He's our incident meteorologist. Type 1 incident command teams actually have their own weatherman that travels and gives us specific weather reports that are very limited to our area affecting your fire. For operations tonight, we've got Operations Section Chief, Mr. Brett Thomas. Then we've got our branch director, Mr. Matt Bowers, who's in charge of the branches he's overseeing the folks that are working right here in your area. We're going to hear from District Ranger, Mr. Francisco Sanchez of the Seward Ranger District. And of course, we've got Mr. Marty Adele, Incident Commander, to answer your questions. And Mr. Dan Nelson from the Office of Emergency Management is going to talk to you about the traffic plan and developments within his office. We've also got a number of folks here from the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, and they'll be available to answer any specific questions you have. All right, with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Tonkin. Jeff. I was close.
Close enough. Good evening. Like you said, my name is Jeff Tonkin. I'm an incident meteorologist for the National Weather Service, and I am one of about 75 incident meteorologists across the country that work for the National Weather Service. And I lived in Anchorage back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and this is now my fifth time down on the Kenai for a wildfire. So a little bit of experience. So what I want to talk to you guys tonight about is a general weather pattern that we're going to see here the next week or so. I'm going to talk a little bit about smoke as well and what we think is going to happen with that. But before I do that, I don't think you guys need an incident meteorologist to tell you how dry it is here, right? From May through August, on average, in this area on the Kenai, you get about 8 inches of rain a year. Do you guys know how much you've gotten this year for that 4-month period? Two inches. So, kind of explains what's happening, right? But help is on the way. As many of you have probably heard, we may have some rain coming this week or next week, as early as Friday night. And I am here to tell you that I am very confident that we're going to see some rain in here. Maybe not a lot, probably not enough to put this fire out, but it should do a nice little dent in what's happening. And so let's get on that. But before I do, I just wanted to show this really quick because I think it's really cool. This is a global image of the winds across. We could scale out. We don't need to do that, but we could zoom out, and it basically shows the whole globe of all the wind patterns going across at this moment in time. But let's go on to satellite. So this is what we call a infrared satellite imagery. You've seen it on TV. Just hit the pause button there. Yep. And then, there we go. Kenai Peninsula, Gulf of Alaska. And what we're really looking at here for a weather change for the next week or so is way out here in the Bering Sea. There's a low pressure system, kind of hard to see, but it's circulating. And this is a warm front, and then a cold front kind of sweeps down like this. And all this blue coloring here that you see is high level clouds and an indication of a front that's sweeping across the Aleutians. So what's going to happen is this low is going to start to track toward Bristol Bay, and it's going to meet another low pressure system that's currently developing that you really can't see, and it's going to intensify greatly once it gets right into Bristol Bay, and it's going to continue to move as it's intensifying right into Kodiak, Shelikof Strait, and then right up into the Kenai. There are two fronts. There's one that's going to occur on Friday night into Saturday morning. That's our first dose of rain. And the second one, which is going to be a little more intense, is going to occur on Saturday and Sunday. And so with the first one, we think we're going to see possibly about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of rain Friday night. And then the second one, hopefully at least another 1/2 inch roughly around the Kenai Peninsula. Okay, next one. So rain's great, right? I'm not going to put the fire out, but it's going to really give us a nice week of moist weather, cooler temperatures, higher RHs. It's going to reduce the fuel dryness and hopefully really dampen some fire activity. What about smoke? So what I have here is a smoke model of different fires around the area, but basically it's the Kenai. And you can see the model is putting all this dark smoke up and around, and today was really bad. The winds today were very, very light, and the smoke along the roadway was really, really thick. But as that storm system starts to come up toward Kodiak, we're going to start to see some southeast winds and some south winds, and it's going to, by Friday night, Saturday, we're going to see all that smoke kind of blow across to the northwest. So we should start to see an improvement in smoke. I think there's going to be significant improvement by Sunday because the rain tends to wash out the smoke, kind of filter out and clean out the air, and then we're going to see a dampen fire activity, so less smoke is being produced. So I really think by next week you're going to see much less smoke in the area as well. More good news. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you, sir. All right, next I'd like to welcome up Operations Section Chief Brett Thomas. Stay in the box, boss.
That's the briefing map that we have then? All right, thank you. Again, thanks for being here. My name is Brett Thomas, and like what Mike mentioned, I'm one of the Operations Section Chief. I've been really kind of focused on what we refer to as the planning side of the house. But what I'd like to do is just give you a rundown of how things have been going across the incident. And then at the kind of tail end of my presentation, I'm going to defer to some of the folks that have been out here working diligently with you as far as one of the branch directors, and that's Mr. Bowers. So I'll have him come up and kind of give you a really good lineup of things, that, you know, some of the items that have been occurring right here near and dear to you here within Cooper Landing. So what I'd like to do is just to start with the fact of kind of how we're organized out there across this incident. And we refer to this as being a 2-branch fire. So we have a branch 1 and then we have a branch 3. And starting over in branch 1, which is on the western end of the fire, we've really been focused on what we refer to as Division Charlie. And you know, that piece of line in there has received a number of crews. We've been working hard with mechanical equipment. We've got quite a bit of a very extensive hose lace, system in there where we're pumping a lot of water. Crews are diligently mopping up. We're in places 50, 100 feet in places, and there's other areas where we're striving for that sort of metric to get that mopped up inappropriately. So there's a lot of work working in this area here, certainly providing protection to those values at risk that sit there in Sterling and the associated communities around Sterling. So as we come around the southern end of the fire, we refer to that as Division Echo. The focus in there with the resources that we've had in there is really kind of keened in on the, if you will, those recreation sites that are within the wildlife refuge. Folks have been in there. We've had some of those sites with pumps and hoses around them. There's been quite a bit of burning that's gone on around those facilities, if you will, to temper that fire behavior as it was to come toward those sort of facilities. And they've been working diligently in there on that lower Ski Lac Road area. And that area is somewhat getting buttoned up. We're feeling pretty darn comfortable in there with those values at risk. And I'm sure you folks have been aware of the efforts that we've done, if you will, a few days back along the Sterling Highway with that fairly large size, or the burnout operation in which we did across the highway. And so we're done with that effort, and we were able to take those crews that we had assigned to that and disperse them, around the rest of the fire. So as we come into what we call Branch 3, then we're over into where we're calling Division Kilo, and those crews have been using the boats just right down the road here. They've been crossing the river in the mornings and hiking up that very, very a steep country, and they've been putting in hose lays and mopping up, and they've had a lot of success in there. In fact, we added a crew today to help with those containment goals in Division Kilo, and our goal there is to significantly reduce that threat of any fire proceeding toward this community right here. So those folks are working hard in there, and like I said, we've certainly made that a priority area for us. We've been using aircraft in there as well when conditions allow, as smoke does lift at times. And they're really just striving to get up and if you will, take that fire line up high enough to where there's a different fuel model, to get out of that, those coniferous species and get into that more of that shrub layer and that brush fuel model that's just not quite as combustible. So as we come around the corner and get closer to your community, our efforts, we do have some line up that Fuller Lake Trail, and that was with an attempt to improve line along that trail system and take a fire edge or take a fire line up to that lake. And we have plumbing along that trail and the ability to hold that fire, and if necessary to basically backburn in there. Right now that fire behavior hasn't really moved a lot. It's pretty shaded in there. The winds don't really impact it a whole lot, and so but we've got a good plan if necessary to operate in that vicinity. As we come around the corner, and I'll focus a little bit on what we refer to as Division Lima, which is of course just to the north of town here, but up the Resurrection Trail, and that's the area. If you'll notice up in the corner of the map, and I think it's H105 if I can see that, but that's the area that we had some challenges with a couple nights ago, and where it crossed that trail, and we had 150-ish acres that had crossed that trail. We do have some folks up there that are up at the lakes up there that have been working on those Forest Service structures up there. We've been working with some aviation assets. Today, unfortunately, given the smoke that's laid in here, very thick, as you folks are certainly very familiar with, we weren't able to get aircraft in there today to work. They just can't work in these sort of conditions. It's not safe for the aviators to be in there. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get that sort of asset in there. We do have plans to do that when the smoke does lift. We've certainly worked hard to establish those contingency line. There's a significant contingency line around town, and that's really been the focus of Division Lima that's gone on to this point. The crew supervisors and those division group supervisors have put together a really good plan around this community, as well as I'm sure you've seen a lot of activity over the last several days, and heck, over the last week or so. And so what I'd like to do is defer to Matt Bowers, who has a great sense of what all's gone on here, with some good specifics, because he's been here day in and day out, and I'll defer to him to give you a rundown of what really's gone on around your community in some really thorough some thorough specificity there. So thanks for your time. I appreciate that, and we'll certainly be here for questions, but I'll turn it over to Matt at this point.
Thanks, Brett. Again, my name is Matt Bowers. I'm one of the branch directors working on Branch 3, which is the site of the fire around our community, your community here at Cooper Landing. Brett kind of touched real general on what we've been doing, and I'll try to go into a little more specifics, but when we're done here, I'll be happy to look at a map and talk to anybody about details or any specific areas. When we first got here, we looked at the road and threats from the south and the north into Cooper Landing. So we've established this division kilo on the south end here, and those crews are making good progress. We've got, as we speak right now, we've got 80 people in there with chainsaws working on getting a containment line around that and getting it into some creek beds here to prevent the spread from the south. That effort has been having good success, and they've been able to hold on to what the fire spread for the last few days. To the north, just across the road, this area has been an area of heat just on the highway. There's been some fire activity in there, and the crews have been able to plug into the road right by the Fuller Lake Trail, and they've been able to stretch hose from the road, working with engines, and contain the heat along the road there. As they get up into a little bit further there, the fire hasn't had the activity that we've seen in a couple of these other areas, like where they're working. They're watching that. They've got people in there watching it, and then they've got a contingency right there on the Fuller Trail. They've widened that trail out and are looking at options of using that trail if the activity starts to pick up here. Our big concern the last couple days has been up here around Trout Lake. A couple days ago, you probably saw the column and the smoke setting in. That fire picked up in activity significantly. It got some winds from the northwest, started to make a little bit of a surge in our direction. That's when we started looking at time frames and proximity to the community here. And we really were able to, we haven't been able to get crews up in there directly. The fire activity has been, the fire activity's been significant enough that we haven't been able to safely insert people in that area, other than a few people that we have up there monitoring and trying to evaluate some options. So there's currently people up there now looking at strategies and options, trying to figure out a way to get some containment in that area to limit the spread. Aircraft, yesterday we were fortunate enough to get some clearing in the conditions, and we were able to get a fair amount of helicopters in there with buckets. And they were able to hold that fire into the area where it was at throughout the day. Those pilots, 4 or more helicopters flew probably close to 8 hours holding that area. And today we have seen a little bit of activity up in here, but we have not seen a lot of movement to the south, which has been beneficial for us. As a contingency around town here, anticipating that if that fire is to continue to move south, or if we do end up getting some more fire activity established over here, we've got contingencies around the community. So what we've got is a substantial containment line, contingency line, excuse me. It stretches all the way from Langell to Slaughter Road to Bean Creek Road on up. There's to the Resurrection and Juneau Creek Trail. That's all had dozer work. Crews have been in there thinning out the fuels the brush, trees, widening that, and they have hose and pumps and tanks all along that whole stretch, and it's significant. There's been a lot of work put into this contingency line, we call it, as a contingency if that fire continues to spread south. That would be our next line of defense. Beyond that, in the community, I imagine that people have really seen a lot of the activity going on with all of the engines and the group. We've got a structure group, and the leader of that structure group's in here now, Ian, and he has been coordinating efforts throughout the community with all of the structures. They've got all of the structures identified, broken into zones. They've got a plan to be able to set up some rally points and coordinate efforts if there was fire in the community. They've started going around helping the homeowners do some work around places. Hopefully you've seen them in and about the community doing work. They're numbering all the houses. That numbering system is to help identify houses on a map so that as resources move around, they've got specific locations. So if you've seen paper plates hanging up, that's what that's for. It's an identification of each of the structures. So far, they've gone around and done work around, I think, a significant amount of the homes, and they're continuing to do the work as we speak. They're out there right now working on things. I think if there's any questions when we're done, I'll be happy to answer anything, look at a map, and I think Ian will be available as well. He's the division supervisor here in the community. So yeah, by all means, any questions, come see us.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent update. I'll get the mop stick back. Thanks. All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce Seward Ranger District Ranger Francisco Sanchez.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Michael said, my name is Francisco Sanchez. I'm your local district ranger out of Moose Pass. And I'm also the agency administrator for the Forest Service on our national forest lands that are adjacent to your property. This fire has been here for 84 days, folks. I know you guys know that because you've been living it. We've been living it as well, and I just want to tell you that it's time to put this thing out. I want to let you guys know that I'm here with you. And I've talked to my FMO, I've talked to the incident commander and his team, and I've given him and the team the authority to do what it takes to make sure that we keep this fire out of our community of Cooper Landing. When the smoke clears and this fire lays down, which it will, I'm still going to be here with you guys. And I want you guys to know that. I really do appreciate your continued patience, folks. It's been long, and I want to also let you know that we are going to get this thing. And thank you for everything you guys have been through, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Please welcome Incident Commander Marty A. Dell, Great Basin, Type 1, Team 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. I got three real quick points I want to make. I won't go over the operations. We can talk about that afterwards or questions. And Matt and Brent have already gone over it in quite length. Three things. First of all, transportation consideration. I know it's difficult. I know you guys and ladies are trying to get up and down this road. I appreciate your patience and your cooperation as far as the delays and everything else. I have had several comments, several questions throughout the past couple days since I've talked to you last, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and it comes down to one thing. safety. I know there's plenty of folks out here that are used to driving in the winter on icy roads, fog covered, and every different hazard that comes around here naturally. But when we close down the road, when the operations give the suggestion to the Alaska State Troopers, or they start talking to us, thinking about is it a consideration we need to shut this down or when we need to open it up, it is not only the firefighter safety, but your safety as well. We've had a couple instances, for instance, on the 25th, you've probably seen that. It's been on several different social media sites where we had the road open and then we quickly closed it down once we started getting a shift in winds and a big gust and pushed towards the road. There was a lot of video online that we saw, and I just wanted to talk to folks that may have been affected by that or may have seen that and answer any questions about that. On that particular instance, we shut down the road when we found out that fire was coming towards it, was impinging on the roadway and getting to that unsafe potential. But by the time we shut it down, we had to clear the road of traffic that had been passed already. So we had seen that. Those individuals driving by those very hot, flaming areas. So we had a couple of instances or records of a vehicle that had been caught on fire, that there was abandoned. A couple things would like to know, or I'd like to tell you is one of those instances had nothing to do with fire. They had mechanical difficulties, actually electrical difficulties, and they were able to put a small electrical fire out with 2% or a whole milk or something like that, which is usually not what we carry in our rigs. So, but they were fine. They were able to get their rig. It was outside the fire area. We also had a situation where some individuals were in a vehicle. It got very smoky. Flames were once again impinging on the road. Those individuals pulled over to the side of the road, got off the road a little bit, left the vehicle, and went back to safety on foot. Luckily, they were picked up very soon thereafter and brought to Cooper Landing. The next day, they were matched back up with their vehicle. No harm to the vehicle. Some local firefighters found the vehicle with the doors open and the vehicle still running. They pulled it out of harm's way. Just wanted a couple things on that. If, in this fire, as we talked about, is very dangerous, and it's not going away tomorrow. So if you're in a situation like that, a couple things. Don't leave your vehicle. Keep your windows rolled up and try to shut your vents off so nothing can be drawn in. Continue, if you're following a pace car or a car with flashers, follow them out. Don't stop, because we don't know if somebody behind you, might not see you, and make sure your flashers are on. I know some of those situations can get tense, especially for those of us in the room or in the community that may not be used to situations like that. Can be very frightening, and I get it. But try not to stay in harm's way. If you see that, try not to go in there at all, but if you have to, keep going and keep moving so somebody doesn't come up behind you, and certainly do not stop. But thank you for your consideration and your patience. As we're coming up here, we see people lined up waiting to get the next 20 miles. We understand it. We recognize what it's doing to the community. Patience, you've got places to go, people see, things to do. We understand. But thank you for your patience. Second, just wanted to let you know, you probably heard, for those folks that were in here the first time around, I can't remember, it may have been Tim explaining that we're here for 2 weeks, and then we rotate with another team, a like team, to take over the situation. We just got word today, this afternoon, that at the national level we requested an extension. The local agencies requested an extension, so we will be here longer than the 2 weeks to try to get you guys a little bit further along and try to help you out in that regard. And third, I know that we've talked a little bit about the weather, the impending weather, the possibility of rain and everything else. We got it. And with the impending weather and what might happen, how much rain we might get, for how many days, I just want to assure you that we don't, the operations group, the team as a whole, never plan on hope. We will continue to plan that this fire is going to be actively burning, and we take all the necessary steps to quell it, to protect the communities. And we're not banking that rain's going to come and put this out. We will actively engage fire where we have to, where we can safely, and keep moving forward for our entire duration here. So that's all I have. Thank you.
We were, this gentleman's the expert in that area. This is Mr. Dan Nelson. He's with the Kenai Peninsula Borough Office of Emergency Management. Try getting that on a business card. Here you go, boss.
Thank you. So can you throw the traffic map up for me, since that was a good segue into starting with traffic. So thank you. We'll start with that. Yes, so that is the best thing, if at all possible. We want you to get to pick up a pilot car and pick that up, and the troopers will help. There is some clearing and some sweeping going on, so if possible, do that. If you can get into one of the lines that I'm going to talk about here, that's usually the best strategy to do it. But wait for a pilot car. We don't know the hazards that are in there, and follow those folks, as Marty just said. I want to talk a little bit about our traffic plan here. We've modified this just a bit for those that are here, that were here in the last meetings, and I just want to point out what those changes are real quick. Mile 71, that Watson Lake on the south side as you're coming into Cooper Landing, remains the same. We had changed since Cooper Landing went into a set for safety. We had changed that traffic control point to the Y, and that has been changed now about 2 miles in from the Y at mile 40. And the reason for that change was simply some logistics and some safety things. It's a little bit easier there if you're familiar with about where that is. Remember, there's some 4 lanes, there's some pullouts. If we've got people that have to move around or do some of those things, we've got room for them. So it's a little bit easier personnel and safety-wise than the Y. Also, of course, our friends trying to go to Seward, we're getting caught up in some backups as well. So we're trying to improve that traffic plan for you. Kind of a little bit at a time. So we kind of joke that we have a plan for a day, and then we try and make it a little bit better, and we're getting that so we have good clearance for you and be able to get traffic through as much as possible. So let me address, this is a little bit different than what we'd announced. We'd announced kind of there were 3 different types of delays that might happen. I would like to echo what Incident Commander Marty said. This is all about safety. So the reason we're still running pilot cars, we've got a very, very active fire. There is still some fire along the roadway. I passed it just coming up here. Smoke is bad today. Visibility is bad today. So we realize that this is a long run, and this is a long run in pilot cars. We appreciate your patience. Thank you. It is the safest course of action for us to take, and make sure that people get to where they need to go and keep the road open as best we can, and moving those pilot cars. So it's purely for safety. We consult with our DOT partners, with our law enforcement partners, and with the fire group each day to figure out what those conditions are, and when we can make that just a little bit easier and a little bit more traffic flowing for you. That being said, I would like the residents of Cooper Landing, before you leave tonight, we are trying to get a little bit of this local traffic moving to where it needs to be, and trying to help you get through that. So could I have one of those, please? Got something for you, hopefully. But I'd like you all to, some of the public information officers in the back are going to help you with this. I've got a very bright green placard here for you. What we'd like you to do is ask you to tape this or have it kind of in your dash on the driver's side. And what this is to help the flaggers and the law enforcement officers see you as local traffic and be able to get through some of that and get in and out of town a bit easier on those checkpoints or those traffic control points that are there. So, grab one of these if you've got for each of your vehicles. And then is Austin here? There you are. We're going to leave some of these with him. If you've got neighbors that need one of these after we're gone, Austin's the person to see. So when you approach a traffic control point, have this with you. Try and safely get up there to the flagger or the trooper, and they'll recognize this, and we'll try and get you into local traffic as best we can. So again, depending on safety and other things, so don't ever go past a point where you've got a stop sign. Obviously stop, check in with those folks, and make sure that there's not a closure for safety or something hasn't happened with the incident that we need to deal with. So hopefully this will help expedite things. So please pick those up for your vehicles as you leave today. So can we go to PIO map real quick? No, public information, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened here a few nights ago. We brought the community into a set status, and there have been some questions here as we look at our map here. You know, so our ready line is up here, our set line is here, and you look at the fire perimeter, and people go, well, why are we in set? So as a reminder, these lines, although you look at them on a map, they look like they're very much lines in the sand. They're very solid things. Once we hit this line, you know, we're going to do this. That's not always the case. These are evaluation points. These are points in which the fire team and the experts are able to look at, you know, do we need to change strategy? Do we need to do something for the public safety? Based on fire behavior the other night, based on weather, and based on you know, just the amount of heat. Did I go out? Okay. Hopefully you all can hear me. So while we fix that, based on fire behavior and based on just what was, thank you, based on what was happening the other night, the decision was made to go to set. So the first thing I ask folks to realize is that these are not lines in the sand, they're evaluation points. So we went to set. They were seeing a lot of heat, a lot of other things kind of with their technological instruments. And if I recall correctly, they were having trouble really getting eyes on things and getting aircraft at that particular time. We are always going to do the most conservative course of action to keep the people safe. That's why we're at set. We're staying there right now because, as was mentioned, we still have an unpredictable fire. We still have things happening. We certainly hope we get that rain that was mentioned by the incident meteorologist, but we're still, until that fire behavior changes and until the team can give us a recommendation that that danger has let us go back to that ready level, we were going to keep the community on set. And that's not to create a panic or do any of those types of things, but it's simply to make sure that we all are at the same awareness level. We don't want to go to ready, go to set, go to ready, and all of a sudden go, we have to go and go to a red or a level 3. So hopefully that makes sense. That's why we're still on ready, and that's why it hasn't passed that line, but we're still in that, and it's still the prudent decision to make. So what happens if we go to red? I want to just mention, if we go to a ready, there's a handout in the back of the room that kind of talks about this. And there's a great check sheet on the back that you can keep in your vehicle, and it'll talk about what that is and what those steps are. If we go to that level, we may go and do that by zones. It may not be the entire community. So if we could pull up the zone map for just a second, I'd like to show you this. You zoom in a bit if you can, thank you. And come down. So you may be able to see, if not, I've got this this map up on the wall here, and we can certainly talk about it later, but these structures and the neighborhoods and the streets are designated into zones. And these zones are, if we have to get to that level 3 go, that red, we may not say the whole community is going to be evacuated. So for instance, perhaps we only say zone 3 and zone 5, or only zone 4, or all zones. We're going to get that information out to you, and I believe this map is on the kpboem.com website. If it isn't, we will get that up there for you. And I believe it's also in your handout, the 4-page legal-sized handout in the back. So if you didn't get that, please grab one. When we get to a go, we're going to tell you which area is in that go status. So you may notice that perhaps if you're on this side of the river, you would be in that go status, but your neighbor on the other side will not be. So that's the reasoning for that. It is very specific. We don't want to paint the whole community with a broad brush. We don't want to say you all need to go when really there's only a specific piece or specific part of the community that needs to go. Please be sure, as we're in this set level, that you take advantage of all the available technologies to get the word. We're going to do the same thing. I know it's difficult sometimes, but with radio reception and television and some of that, but listen to your radio. Make sure you're registered for KPB alerts. Follow the kpboem.com blog or the Facebook site. You know, all of us use technology differently. The borough is going to make sure we get out all of the information we can in all of the ways we can. Now, I know when there was a set, we did find a bit of a bug in our system where some people didn't get that entire message. And we are going to be repeating that message and programming the system to play that multiple times, which should alleviate that and should be able to deliver that live to whoever answers or to an answering machine. One note, if you do get that call, remember this call comes from an 866 number, 866 something 5000. Forgive me, I don't recall it off the top of my head. If you call that number back, it will also replay the message. So if you get a missed call, you can hit that number. It's not a scam number, and get that message repeated. So we're going to use all of those available tools. So I'd like to end by just mentioning that the borough administration, Mayor Charlie Pierce, our local congressional delegation, I know Senator Peter Machicki is here today, thank you for that, are here and committed to work with the team for your safety. So all of these actions are there. And that's why I'd like to address kind of the last thing in the room that we've gotten questioned on is the other night when we went into set, some people were not able to get back into their homes. And if we could go back to that highway map real quick, please. Based on that fire behavior, the best thing to do was to close the road and to close it between the Y and that milepost 71. The behavior was as such that we closed the road and then swept the road to get the folks out of there that had already been let past. Just like what happened the other night where you may have seen those videos on the news or social media. So the set is not an evacuation, as we know, and it's not intended to not let anybody back in their home. But the safest thing that night was to keep that road clear if we had to go to an evacuation or to let the firefighters do their job. So I wanted to address that. We weren't trying to be deceitful to you or be dishonest, but that was the safest thing to do. And we're always going to err on the side of safety. So I stand by that decision. I just wanted to let folks know that's exactly why it was. So with that, I'll hand it back over and available for questions, of course, later.
Thank you, sir. Our final speaker this evening, Senator Machicki.
Thank you, sir. I'll be very brief, and don't mind this, and don't listen to anything my wife says about how it happened. I guess what I wanted to say is these guys are not going to thank themselves, but to the Great Basin team, the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and all of these first responders, a huge thank you for being so dedicated to our communities on dealing with this situation. These guys are working hard. I know all of you have been dealing with this all summer. And I'm not a firefighter, I'm not a state trooper, but I'm doing what I can to provide state services that we can to not only deal with it now, but I'm going to ask you to ask me about the one-offs. I mean, an example is Arden talked about the possibility if Gwen's is closed because of the fire, she may need a large tent to help feed the community and firefighters. For things like that, we have many community partners, and we can rise to the occasion and get you what you need. So please count on us. Feel free to call my office, 283-7996. Ben has been committed. We've been in daily touch with the governor. I know our congressional representatives are here as well. So please count on us on how we can help for the things that these guys can't do, these men and women can't do. It's our job. We're here to help. And I can tell you one thing, we are no longer going to cut back on funding for wildland firefighting, which has been a problem in the state for the last 3 years or so. Happens every year. Every year we're running into these same situations, and we've cut ourselves short. But we have the right folks here, and I want to say my heart goes out to you for what you've put up with all summer. I'm on the other side of the fire. We've got smoke once in a while, and it's just a fraction of what you're dealing with. So we're hoping for the best, good news, and we'll be here to support you however we can after it's all over. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, thank you very much for your patience. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and open up the floor for some general questions. We'll also be taking questions from the folks who are online following this meeting. So who has a question? Yes, sir. What can we do for you?
The weatherman said we're expecting some rain. I'm wondering, are we going to quit the fire just because it starts raining, or are we going to stay and finish with this job?
We're gonna stay and finish it, sir. It's going to be a very light rain.
Also, the other day, I was able to drive through with 10 feet of flame along the road. Yesterday, no flame, diminished smoke, and I had to wait for a pile truck.
So everybody hear that question? The gentleman said that the other day he drove by and had a bunch of flame alongside the road, and then yesterday no flame and he had a pilot car. And it's relates back to what I was speaking of, just short a while ago. When we sense a threat, we notice a threat, we get reports of it, we take action. Well, we'll talk with the state troopers and with DOT to look at closing once we feel that the road is no longer safe. That does take time to sweep or cleanse the area and then get a pilot car after that. And it very well may have been we close it down just behind you. I know we closed it a couple times in the past couple days, and then yesterday may have been the same thing but slightly different, that we were either closed it and the threat had passed and we were waiting to reopen it, or just simply maybe the smoke was inundating the road to a point where we did not feel comfortable just allowing people to go up and down, or we have to constrict the highway. It's just one lane at a time.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I have a two-part question. Living here in Cooper Landing, knowing that we have mile 40 and mile 71 that we're doing pilot cars. So we have very little traffic in Cooper Landing unless there's a line moving through. How do we know whether or not we can go one way or the other if there's no traffic on the road?
Right. The question is, living in Cooper Landing, how do we know if it's going to be possible to travel to Sterling or elsewhere? Here you go, sir.
And that might be something that we'll have to look at a bit more. So, typically that advice there is, as that pilot car line goes through, like you described, get on the back of that. There's really not a great way to, maybe determine when some of that happens or timing. But I'm wondering if Lieutenant Zweifel, if you can add anything to this conversation. I guess I just don't have a great answer. Would you, from a safety standpoint, speak to that?
I will. So what we have in place for the residents right now is we do have the stop at mile 40, as you know, and the stop at mile 71. We also have a stop at mile 53. If you've been trying to go to Sterling, you'll run into that roadblock there at mile 53. The message we've been putting out to the general public is to, if you're Cooper Landing residents and you need to get to Sterling, is to grab the highway, go down to mile 40, get in the line, and then the pilot car will take you through. We realize that's not the best use of your time. What we ask is just to drive down to mile 53. You're going to get stopped there, and when the pilot car comes through, just follow in at the end of the line. Yeah.
Second part of my question.
Okay.
Evacuation notices. Okay, we have all of these different zones. If we get to go,
So typically, in a perfect world, we would only notify Zone 3 by our alerting system, by our phone calls or by our text messages. The practice is we don't really do it that way. We do make it a bigger area, for many, many reasons. First of all, in a community like Cooper Landing, we want you all to be aware and know if you've got neighbors over at your house, all these types of scenarios that we have. So we purposely make that kind of a bigger notification area. We're going to try we have very detailed messaging when that goes as far as which zone, in which areas, trying to reference street names and some of those types of things as well. So expect the message to be broad, and that's why I say we'll be sure and have that this zone map here up on our website to look at before. It would be helpful. Take a quick glance at it, know which zone your residence is in. So when we do say Zone 3 or Zone 5, you'll have an idea. And we'll try and describe that. I know you know your community very well. You don't need us to probably describe street names, but we want to make that a very clear message because we know in a stressful situation, we need to hear things a couple times. We may forget that zone number just as soon as it's said, that type of thing. So please expect the message to go broader than just that small geographic area, because we'd rather notify everybody and maybe get people to get a phone call or have dinner interrupted rather than miss somebody. Makes sense?
Everybody gets this thing and everybody starts panicking and take off. Is that going to cause problems on the highway?
So that's something that we've been looking at. So when we talk about evacuation, we've talked in our last meeting how that highway is being turned and controlled by some of the law enforcement folks. You might see some National Guard folks helping us to direct traffic. What we're going to ask when we talk about, for instance, let's say Zone 3 gets a go notice and you're asked to leave at once, we're going to have that traffic control in place depending on the zones that come up and where they're coming from. It's a little bit hard for me to speak to just because we don't know the exact areas, but we're going to ask those folks to be able to get down there, and we're going to try and control traffic to affect that evacuation. We don't want folks that are in different zones. We want you to listen to that message. That's why I say we're going to try and be very clear about the areas. Some people may choose to evacuate if you're not in that zone. If you do get a go, that's your choice, absolutely, but we're going to try and make that real clear so we know those areas. So that's on us to explain it, and as I mentioned earlier with some of those go notices, we're going to repeat that several times and try and get that information out for you. So does that make some sense? Thank you.
All right, folks, if you'll bear with us just for a second, we've got a lot of your friends and neighbors who couldn't be here this evening who are sending us questions online. I'd like to run through a few of these. They are pertinent, and I'm sure that you'll be interested in the answers as well. One question is, who should I contact about my property in Cooper Landing if I'm not currently in the area but am concerned? This is stump the panel.
I heard somebody in response to that question shout out, check with your neighbor, which is always a good strategy. I'm assuming that was the entire question. So that is something if you're concerned about your property itself or some of those things after an evacuation, there will be additional eyes and security in those areas so no one chooses to take advantage of a situation. As far as if you're concerned about the fire or where it is, we can help you with our website's got an interactive viewer with this parcel, and I'll also give out the information number for our call center that may be able to help you with resources, and that is 907-262-INFO, I-N-F-O. So without knowing too much more, that's the best answer, and as was suggested here in the room, also maybe perhaps check with a neighbor that can help you with that.
Okay, next question, and I'm sorry, sir, if you could, I'm not going to forget about you. Where are the evacuation sites for people and for livestock? You might as well stay up here, sir.
So we have two potential evacuation sites for folks and for livestock that may occur, depending on which direction we go. So Typically, as when we talked about the set line and where that fire behavior was, we actually were changing our strategy a bit and thinking about if we had to go that evening the other night, we would actually be going towards Soldotna based on where the fire was coming down. There's also that possibility in there that would come down and we would need to go towards Seward or Anchorage. So if we have something like that and you need any type of assistance, whether it's overnight lodging or you need to talk about what's happening or check in or get information, if we go towards the Soldotna area, is the Soldotna Sports Center. They're right there on the start of K Beach Road in town. There's also the rodeo grounds that has an area for livestock there. In the Seward area, it'll be the Avtech building, which is down on, I believe 4th Avenue. Don't quote me on the address. For livestock for the Seward area, we are going to have to check on that. There are some sites that are suitable, and I just need to confirm if we actually have gotten one secured and exactly which site that is. So we will follow up with the answer to that one.
And I apologize, we do respect your time, and we're trying to move as quickly as we can, but we want to make sure we answer all your questions. Trooper Zoifel would like to make a clarification on the passes that you've got there, the traffic passes. Very important information.
So I just wanted to make sure that you know those green passes are not going to get you, if you're over at mile 71 on the Sterling, it's not going to get you a pass onto the highway at mile 71. What that's going to do, and it's not going to get you a pass if you're at mile 53 trying to go to Sterling. What that green pass is going to get you is around that milepost 40 checkpoint there, because we realize you're going to have to go in and out. But our danger zone, where we really have to control traffic, is in between milepost 53 and milepost 71. And that's where we truly need the pilot car. But so we have as little impact on the community as possible. We moved that first checkpoint out to mile 40, so there's not traffic stacked up on the Seward right here in the community. And so to help you out, that's what the green passes are for, is to get you around that milepost 40. I just wanted you to know that it's not going to get you to Sterling. Go ahead.
I have a question about that. I was in Mount Fulton today, so if I would have a green pass, I could run around and come into the community, is that correct?
That's correct.
The problem with that is the double lane road where I was, and I pulled out, and there was a oversized road coming in the other direction, that's where I got there. I thought maybe I could get up to the flagger and street, so that's gonna cause problems if people pull out, if somebody's coming at you.
And I realize that, and I wish I had a better answer. If you don't feel safe doing it, you're more than welcome to stay in the line. We're just trying to help you get you through back and forth as best we can.
That's actually a question that I've got as well. I had understood that the mile 41 would be the flagger, so obviously like can't stop travel a bit, but having it back there means you can't get it out and see whether it's safe to go. So I did that on my way here to the meeting after I then went back to where I've got evacuated stuff, and actually walked down a considerable distance just to see if I had a good long lake before I'd be able to drive up. So it's effectively not a pass.
Okay, we'll certainly take those comments back because we have a daily traffic meeting. I'll take that feedback to the traffic committee that we have and we meet every morning and pass that concern on and see if we can't improve that.
Is this a question for the trooper? Go ahead, sir.
So when the Parks Fire Highway fire happened, and people evacuated, there's a lot of looting going on. What do you guys do to make sure that doesn't happen?
If you folks couldn't hear, the gentleman's asking about at a previous fire when everyone was evacuated, there was looting. Wants to know what plans are in place to prevent that in the event that you're evacuated.
So I just want to clarify that was a complete rumor up on the Parks Highway. We had patrols in that area 24/7, making sure the residents that were left empty were safe. We have the same plan here, that if any area is evacuated, we're going to staff it up with law enforcement that's just going to patrol around 24/7 to make sure that when you come back home, that your stuff is still there.
Do you have a follow-up question, sir? All right, well, go ahead, we got you.
So when you said that you had an extension for the type 1 team, it's a two-part. How long is the extension, and are you only replaced by type 1, or does that depend on where the fire is going to be?
The extension that we got, our teams are typically deployed for a 14-day work assignment. If it looks, if it's warranted, we can extend for 21 days. Beyond 21 days, they feel like we get just too tired to make good decisions. And in regard to what kind of team would come in behind us, that will completely depend on the situation that we're facing at that point. They'll look at that and they'll analyze it and determine what best suits your needs. Is that good? All right. Okay. I'm trying to cut a couple of these through from the internet, the folks, because we can't answer them face to face. Word is the fire is close to the Princess Lodge, but maps show it nearly 4 miles away. Is it close?
No, I think that what the map shows is appropriate.
Yeah, these maps are accurate. They're infrared maps. They're updated. They're done by professionals, and they can be trusted. Okay, and a question for our weather expert. What is the wind speed and direction forecast for this weekend?
Well, that's a great question because, as a lot of you know, we likely have strong winds right before a front, right? And that's certainly the case with this strong front coming in this weekend. So the good news is we are expecting some winds ahead of the front and ahead of the rain, but the great news is those winds are from a favorable direction, south and southeast, for this community. So anything would push the opposite direction. That's really good news. Right now we're looking at right before the rain hits, as the front goes through, likely 10 to 20 miles per hour. But that will be followed by rain. And like I said, that's a favorable direction. That should not impact the community.
Okay, again, I apologize. This is running pretty long. We've got 4 questions here from the 312 people who are watching this via the internet. We'll burn through these and then we'll break. Everyone will stay here and we will stay as long as we have to address your concerns. But I know a lot of you folks are getting tired of sitting there, so we'll try to wrap this up. All right, what's happening with the Upper Chickaloon drainage? I'm concerned about a mining cabin at the confluence of the American, Abernathy, and Alfonso valleys on Resurrection Trail. Thank you.
My understanding is that the Chickaloon drainage is in the northern part, and the structures that we know of in that area to the north of that fire activity are not threatened at this time. However, they're being monitored with the maps, with aircraft, and we're continuing to watch any spread in that direction and come up with actions based on where that fire's at, try to get folks in there as needed.
Thank you, sir. All right, this next question is, where exactly is the current fire boundary in relation to Cooper Landing, specifically in relation to Slaughter Creek? And I believe that is shown pretty clearly on the map. This is Slaughter Creek right here, and this is Cooper Landing. So there's still a fair distance there, and I hope that answers the question. All right. I am concerned about further ash runoff into the streams and Kenai River. pH swing would kill a large amount of fish. Is this a concern? What is being done about it? Fish and Wildlife?
This is also a concern of ours, and once again, in earlier conversations at the community meetings, one of our objectives, as we talked about last week, one of the big objectives for us is the environmental quality, and we're doing everything we can to stop any further growth. After this fire is completed, or in a situation where we can start getting other teams in, there are different teams throughout the Forest Service and the DOI that come in and look at the very topic that was asked about runoff, where it could be a problem and where it cannot, and we can start looking at different stabilization techniques after the fact, so we do not have tremendous amounts of runoff into the river and try to save that. Problem we're going to run into is this thing is going to go for quite a while yet, and then you're going to run right into the winter, get snowpack on top of it, and then it kind of depends on how quickly that stuff will melt off in the spring.
All right, for our last question, before we go to the boards, when helicopters can't be utilized, are there any of the crews dispatching unmanned aerial systems with FLIR infrared systems? Matt?
We do have a drone on scene, and they were flying today with cameras helping to survey some of the fire area. Do not have infrared with that drone, that particular drone that's here, but crews are able to look at on-screen real-time flights with the drones and see where things are at and what it's doing.
All right, I know that many of you have still got questions, and we are committed to staying here and answering those questions. But like I say, out of respect for everybody's time, we're going to go ahead and end the question and answer portion of the meeting. Everybody will all stay here. We'll go to these maps, and we will meet face to face with you and do our best to get you the information you need. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your patience.